Good morning and welcome to the Sunday worship service of the Unitarian Universalist Society of Schenectady. Today is Sunday, March 24th. I am Stephanie Maslanka, she, they. I am serving today as co-worship leader along with LB Hannas, all pronouns, and Lars Dahl, pronouns are he, him. If you are joining us on Zoom or here in the Great Hall, your presence brings gratitude. Welcome. Our lives, our cultures, our UU worship experiences run deep with traditions. We have just seen the tradition of the ever constant changing of time just a few weeks ago. On the 19th, we marked the vernal spring equinox. It may not yet feel like spring has sprung, but tradition and the calendar says it has. For some, today is the celebration of Palm Sunday. Traditions. We come to feel the need to remember, cherish, and even change our traditions over time. And may we consider new traditions together?
Good morning. Traditions can start off in a lot of ways, including a lot of unexpected ways. I'm here to tell a little story about a tradition of mine that started around 4 years ago. It was 4 years ago when I graduated from college and jumped into the start of my quote-unquote adult life. It was the first year of the COVID pandemic, and yet somehow I managed to graduate college with a job lined up in my field of political science. The job description changed a couple of times to include the word Zoom a lot more, but nonetheless, I was excited to start my professional life, even though I had no idea what was in store for me. My new job was in Hartford, Connecticut, a city I had never been to before. On the drive down with my parents, all my belongings in tow, I thought about what Hartford had in store for me and all the new opportunities that moving would bring. I didn't explore as much as I wish I did in college, and I was excited to get the opportunity to get to know a new place, get to be part of a new community. After a couple of weeks, though, I realized that my dreams of exploration would not pan out, mainly due to a couple entirely predictable reasons. Reason one, I didn't have a car at the time, so getting around was a little tricky. I could try taking the bus, but this was a time before vaccines, and COVID was pretty scary, so I didn't feel quite safe taking public transportation. The second reason, while I could easily walk from my apartment out to the rest of the city, there really wasn't much of a neighborhood surrounding my apartment. The neighborhood I lived in was known as the area that used to be a neighborhood before the highway was put in and big parking lots erected. The area never really fully regained its status as a neighborhood, and that community never came back. Reason three, it being 2020, many of the places I wanted to go, visit, and explore were all closed off because the pandemic had shuttered so many of the local businesses. And even if those other issues didn't exist, work was making exploring a little challenging. While I enjoyed the work I did do, I was being pushed too hard. Turns out working 55 to 60 hours a week, every week on Zoom, isn't really conducive to having a life outside of work. It was a dark time. And while I did enjoy talking to my coworkers as we wrapped up late at night, it was hard connecting to people I only really saw on Zoom. I chatted on the weekends with a couple of friends who come to visit me, as well as my family, but I felt lonely and a sense of isolation, a real struggle without a community. I was having trouble taking care of myself, so I started up a new tradition. Every day I was going to walk outside just to be sure I left my apartment. The one destination that was around my apartment was a little small pond with a path around it. The path only took me around 5 minutes to walk around, but I had a destination every day. at least one lap around that pond, and walking that pond really helped me. It gave me a sense of stability, of calm, even when there was no one to share the space with, except for a couple of geese who were in the middle of the path. I walked that loop every day, even on the days I started work before 8 a.m. and didn't stop working for more than 5 minutes until it was time for bed at 10. As you can imagine, I got burned out pretty quickly, and I didn't last too long, and I moved back home after a year on the job. It took me a couple months to recover from that nonstop stress and the feeling of isolation. While I quickly dropped my plans for exploring Hartford, moving back with my parents started reminding me of my original goal of exploring. When people asked me my favorite place when I was in Hartford, I felt embarrassed and struggled to name any. I could probably count every restaurant I went to on just two of my hands, despite living there for a year. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized I couldn't do a whole lot better here in the capital region. I had been to a lot more places and there's a lot more to do here, but it was a little embarrassing how few places I have gone to for someone who spent their whole lives growing up in this area. I didn't have any regular tradition to help ground me on the ways that my walk around the pond used to help me. So when I got a new job, and moved to Albany, I resolved to do better. I wanted to find my community, a replacement for my walks around the pond. I wanted to explore and be a part of the greater community around me. I wanted a space where I belonged and where I could reflect on everything that was happening around me. Finding a sense of belonging and community was easy for me. I've always felt at home at UUSS, so the decision to come back here every weekend felt natural. I felt welcomed back by all of you and by participating, and I found a sense of belonging I never really had in Hartford. The bigger challenge for me was to reach outside of my comfort zone. I'd gotten far too comfortable of living almost my entire life in just a one bedroom apartment in Hartford, and I vowed to never do that again. I also had a car now, and with the pandemic calming down a lot, I really didn't have an excuse to go out and explore. So I made a new rule for myself. At least once a week, every week, I would go somewhere new in Albany or elsewhere in the capital region. I gave myself a pass on every week that I was out of town or I had guests or family who were visiting, but every week I've stuck to it. When I first set this goal, I thought it'd be a great way to explore Albany. I figured I probably had maybe a year worth of exploration and learning to do before I'd have to give up on my rule. One of the many things I didn't realize when I set that rule is that I was going to learn a lot about myself than I did about Albany through this process. I learned lots of little things, including the history of Albany, and I enjoy researching new places at home than I do actually exploring them. But I also learned how to take care of myself, how to make time in my schedule for me, even when my schedule was full. I learned a lot about what my limits are and how to better plan for when my schedule is going to be a little hectic. Somehow, spending more time on me made my schedule more free, made my schedule feel emptier and much more manageable, despite scheduling out more time. I'm proud to say that in my third year of this tradition, I've kept my goal every week without fail. Embracing this new tradition has helped me grow and transform, and I strongly encourage others to try to grow and add new traditions to their lives as well. Thank you.